Now we're ready to animate. I'll select the planet and I'm going to go down to the timeline, which appears at the bottom of the viewport. At the far right hand side, I'm zooming in, and there's a toolbar here which allow us to preview our animation, rewind, move to keyframes, etc. And we'll deal with that as we address those issues. The important component here, though, is to make sure that the second button in from the left, that's the one next to the little running orange man, has got a red background. That's going to allow us to drop virtual keyframes when we animate. So that has to be checked off. With my playback head at the beginning of the timeline, I'm going to delete by type history, and I'm going to go to Modify, Freeze Transforms. I'm going to right-click on the word Rotate Y and choose Key Selected. A red box appears in the channel box next to Rotate Y, and there's a corresponding red line in the timeline at the beginning. I want this to rotate 360 degrees. Now I'm going to set my timeline so I've got more frames other than perhaps the default 120. Going to the box, second one in from the right, this active text box, I'm going to put 300. And now I've got 300 frames showing in my animation. I'll put my playback at frame 100. I have the option to drag it there if I chose, or I could go to the active numerical box to the left of the toolbar and I could have put 100 in there. Going back to the channel box now, I'll click, select the 0 and put in 360. I'll now play the animation. I could drag through if I wanted manually, but to play it I could go to the toolbar in the lower right hand corner. If I click on the large triangle to the right, it will play my animation. But what you're going to notice is once it passes by 100, that second red line, it is static. I'd like this animation to go at that speed for the duration of my animation, no matter how many frames I might add. I'm going to introduce a new tool to my toolbar. Holding down Command and Shift for the Mac or Control Shift on a PC, I'm going to go to Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. With my geometry selected, I'll click on the Graph Editor. And you'll see a green line that has a orange diamond shape at either end. I'm going to marquee select that. And then at the top of the toolbar for the Graph Editor, you'll see an orange diagonal line with a white box on it. I'll click on it, and you'll notice the path straightens out. That means that the shape will not ease in and ease out when it animates. And we want it to be consistent. Now while I'm in here, I'm also going to go to Curves, Post-Infinity Cycle. Now my animation of the planet will spin as many times as the entire animation requires. I'll go ahead and play it, and once it passes by frame 100, you'll see it continues to rotate. Now we'll apply the animation cycle to the ring. Selecting it, I'll put my playback head at the beginning of the timeline, clicking on Delete by Type History, going to Modify, Freeze Transforms. In the channel box, I'll right-click and choose Key Selected for Rotate Y, and I'll put my playback head at frame 50. I'll change the Rotate Y to -360. And now I have one cycle between the 50 frames in our timeline. Like the planet, I'd like it to continually rotate for the duration of the animation. With the ring selected, I'll go to the Graph Editor, and I'll marquee select the keyframes in the green line. And at the top of the Graph Editor, I'll click on the diagonal orange line with the white box to straighten the ease in and ease out. Going to Curves, I'll go to Post-Infinity and click on Cycle. Now if I play my animation, both elements are rotating for the duration of the timeline settings. Now I'm going to add one more animated ring. I'm going to select the ring, and I'll hit E on the keyboard, and I'm just going to tip it a little bit. Going to my top view, I'll hit Command D to duplicate, and I'll hit R and I'll scale it out beyond the original. Going to my perspective view, I'll just tip it perhaps in the opposite direction. Now I need to animate that ring. As I did with the other, I'll start at the beginning of the timeline, delete by type history, freeze transforms, right-clicking on Rotate Y in the channel box, choosing key selected. I'll put my playback head at frame 50, and I'll make this 360. If I drag through, the second ring's going in the opposite direction. But once again, it stops after the first 50 frames. With the geometry selected, once again I'll click on the graph editor, marquee selecting the green line and the keyframes, clicking on the diagonal orange line with the white box, and going to curves, post infinity, and cycle. Now if I play my animation, all the components animate for the duration. Now all we need to do is texture map the planet.